What was your scariest a second later and I would have died moment? Basically I got T-boned by a van while riding my bicycle. Missed me by a couple inches, destroyed the back of the bike, and threw me into traffic. A couple months ago I was in a head-on collision with some dude on crack driving down the wrong side of the road with his headlights out. I was going probably around 50 before I saw him. Speed limit was 55, so that's my best guess. Saw him with a second or two of reaction time. Managed to brake hard and swerve over, only bad enough to total my car, but I still walked away with nothing more than a sore neck. If I hadn't seen the dude, I don't doubt that I could have died or been seriously injured. My friend and I were taking an elevator down to the cafeteria in our dorm in college. For some reason, we were arguing about something when the doors opened, so we hung back for a second. Then the elevator dropped 2 floors with the doors open. I still hate getting in out of elevators and I do a weird running start every time. Edit happened in Canada, was an old building elevator, 1950s. Second edit, we were in the elevator when it dropped. More terrified of the getting sliced in half aspect than the drop. Outside my college dorm my freshman year there was this stoop that was half under the building, half out from under it. The building was 18 stories tall. So I'm sitting out there, sitting on the steps not under the building, and I get up for no real reason and walk under the building. As soon as I get under the building, a huge sheet of glass falls right where I was sitting. Some idiots were messing around on the 11th floor and knocked a 10x9 window pane out of its mooring. I was walking into a Miller's Outpost, tells you the time period, and the M from the sign above the store fell down and hit me on the shoulder. It was a big glass sign. One moment sooner and it hits my head. Because it drew blood, the store offered to give me any item I wanted so I wouldn't sue. I chose an awful red cardigan. I was 16 and dumb. I passed out at work and came around in the hospital. They diagnosed a bleed on the brain and eventually decided to drill a hole in my skull to drain the fluid. Just as they were about to put me under, the phone rang. It was the head of neurology. I actually had a burst aneurysm. According to my doctor, I would have probably been dead seconds after they started the surgery. When I was in junior high I was carpooling with another kid and her mom. For a reason I can't fathom, she decided to race a transit train hoping to get across the tracks before the train stopped traffic. She gunned the car. I was in the backseat screaming no. She hit the train. Because I was in the backseat I was injured the least. I had a pointy piece of metal pierce through my jeans and flesh until it hit bone. Had she been a second faster the train would have hit us broadside and killed us all. Edit to answer the questions. This was 1980. She was not charged or sued. It was labeled an accident. She and her daughter suffered broken bones, lacerations and concussions. Because of the parental acrimony I couldn't be friends with the girl anymore. The family moved away before the end of the school year. I know at the time her mum was still not working. I'm not sure if she ever went back to work. Clearly she had or had developed some kind of mental or emotional problem which the accident probably made worse. I wondered if she was an alcoholic who began day drinking, but I never mentioned my suspicion to anyone. I needed crutches for a few months. My stepbrother and his sister were in a couple and something similar happened. He was only a little kindergartner, his sister was in middle school. Apparently though in their situation the car got stuck or stalled on the tracks as a train was coming. The adult in charge got them all out of the vehicle, but instead of taking them far away, she had them all stand up against a very close by building. When the train hit the car it flung the vehicle into the group. Somehow my stepbrother managed to not get hit by anything, but his sister was killed instantly. Horrible situation, shattered the family. When I was in middle school I called my mom on my cell during lunch because my head hurt so badly I couldn't move. She was one on speed dial. Well, the nurse came and brought me to the office for a checkup and some pain pills while I waited for my mom. We didn't live close. Nurse said no fever and to take me home and put me to bed. My mom watched me get into the truck and decided that maybe we should go to the hospital to be safe. By the time we reached the hospital it was further than our home. My temp was at 104 and I was incapacitated. I had meningitis. If we went home and she put me to bed like the nurse suggested, I never would have woken up. About 30 years ago my family and I were driving up to Jasper, Alberta in the winter. There was a slow car in front of us, and an impatient one behind us who kept trying to pass. Eventually the car behind us did pass, on a blind corner and hit a logging truck head on. The slow car in front of us was also hit, but my dad managed to put us in the shoulder and not in the collision. This was way before mobile phones, or anything like that. So I remember my dad and my older brother getting out and going over the other cars and talking with the truck driver. It was this indescribable moment of total silence, and freezing cold, and disbelief until the authorities came quite a bit later. I remember sitting in the backseat with my younger brothers wondering what the hell just happened. I was working on a pipe crew in 1998. We were installing a large concrete vault in a pretty big hole. I'm standing in a ditch about 6 feet deep marking grade while the excavator operator is digging. So to the front of me is a large excavator bucket, itself weighing hundreds of pounds and backed by powerful hydraulics and thousands of pounds of steel armature. And behind me is a solid concrete wall about a foot thick. And the ditch is only a few feet wide and too tall for me to jump or climb out of with any kind of speed. Suddenly the excavator spins to one side and the arm snaps out a full extension with full force, and the operator shuts it down. The bucket missed my head by about a foot. He climbs out of the machine, visibly shaken, and tells me that something has failed on the machine and the arm wasn't supposed to have done that. So as he's been digging he's been noticing that ever so slightly there's a bit of a delay between his inputs and the machine's actions. And in the moment before failure he just felt something wasn't right and tried to pull the bucket in. When it didn't seem to want to, he turned the excavator just in case and that's when the arm extended. Had he not, I would have been crushed to fucking death. There were 2 other excavator operators on that crew, and they were basically idiots. Had one of them been with us that day, I'm sure I'd be dead. My backpack got hit by a car while I was wearing it. Knocked me flat on my ass but I was okay. Had a bad hangover and was kind of nervous jittery, which in turn made me extra watchful. I was driving home, light turned green and I started to go. Car going about 45 in crowded city traffic gives no fucks and goes right through the red. I slammed on the brakes and felt my anti-lock brakes engage for the first time in I don't know how long. Guy missed me by inches. Didn't even slow down. Had I not been hungover I doubt I would have given the cross traffic that second look to see him barreling toward me. He likely would have T-boned me right in the driver's door. I had a similar experience driving home from work one night. Streets were dead all the way home. I'm approaching a red traffic light that turns green. For some reason I didn't immediately start accelerating like I normally would and a car comes speeding through the intersection at least 20 kilometers over the limit. Would have killed me for sure. It was roughly 4 doors down from my house. Kinda terrifies me being so close to safety and being 100% in the green, yet someone else's carelessness can completely wipe that out in a second. I was freshman in college and came back to my hometown for fall break. I decided to go to a football game to hang out with some old friends. On the way home, I stopped at a red light and when it turned green, I pulled forward, as usual. From the left, a truck suddenly hit me. He was speeding and ran the red light, T-boned me right in front of my driver's door. I luckily got out with just an injured knee and fractured clavicle and some bruising. It haunted me for a while that. Had I pulled forward just a little faster or he had been just a quarter second slower he would have gone straight into my driver's door and I likely wouldn't have made it. He wasn't even drunk or under the influence, it was just a 16-year-old kid not paying attention. My dad and I were driving down the road after heavy rainfall in Vermont. He is driving, and I am fiddling with the radio. I hear a very loud crack, and before I can ask my dad what it was, out of the corner of my eye I see movement. An entire tree was falling on the road. Due to the heavy rainfall, the dirt was too wet to keep some trees in place. My dad stood on his brake, cartoon style, and we slid nearly right into the tree. I heard a pop before we fully stopped, and when we lurched back to 0 miles per hour, we were both breathing hard. My dad got out to check the damage, and the pop I hear was a branch hitting a headlight out. First time I've ever seen my dad call L911. It was scary. Could have been the end of us if he didn't stop to chat to the waitress after we left the restaurant to go home. Similar. On my way to class about 2 years ago, middle of a rainstorm, and I turn onto my usual backroad shortcut to get on campus. As I'm rounding a corner, I just watch this really tall tree start to seat, then slowly fall down onto the ground. I doubt the tree was heavy enough to have killed me, but it would have really beat up my car. Then last year, I think it was even around February, my parents are both just getting home. My mom has a box of pizza with her. And I'm looking over my dad's shoulder out the window at the tree that used to be over our driveway and asked when it fell. Turns out it came down in the time it took for my parents to come inside with food and groceries, and about 30 seconds earlier it would have killed both of them. It totaled my dad's car, but he had the biggest of the 3 cars, so my mom's only got a few minor dings in the hood, and mine was fine. They took some pictures for Facebook and such, and I can see about digging them up. Once I almost stepped on a scorpion fish. That was a close call, believe me. It was in no more than 3 feet of water in plain sand, so be careful everyone. I've alt posted about this elsewhere, but when I was in high school I was attacked by a man who slammed me up against a brick wall and started banging my head against it, hard. After about the 3rd bang I realized he was trying to knock me unconscious, so I closed my eyes and acted like I'd passed out. He let me fall to the ground, and he took a second to position himself on top of me. That's when I scrambled out of his reach and took off running. I'm pretty sure that if he'd gotten his hands on me again I wouldn't be alive right now. Similar story actually. I was about 10, my uncle got drunk at a restaurant and I went outside for a breather. He came outside as well and said something like good kids don't go outside without an adult and started choking me, holding me up by the neck. Luckily one of my cousins came out and he let go of me, but my dad literally had to be held back from killing him. I could be dead or with a dad in jail. Spooky moment.